Cannon League result tonight in Division 4, Hereford 1, Colchester 1. It's little more than 3 months before the Olympic Games, and for the elite of Britain's athletes, the 10 already chosen to go, the training and preparation is now entering its final stages. 2 of those elite, Steve Cram and Dave Moorcroft, have chosen to make their first serious outing of Olympic year in a unique road race through the streets of Newcastle. The race is over 5,000 metres, and there's certain to be lots of support from the northeastern crowd. To set the scene for us now, here's Ron Pickering.
Well, they're gallant along the Scotswood Road in Newcastle here, or at least pretty close to it, in this city centre road race over 5,000 metres. Already a great turnout and a great atmosphere, always guaranteed in the northeast. Well, of course, it's a clash between the reigning world record holder at 5,000 metres, David Moorcroft, versus the pride of the northeast, the reigning Commonwealth, European and world champion at 1,500 metres, Steve Cram, who'll be cheered all the way. Both are now fully recovered from injury, both already selected for Los Angeles, but each is looking to get their competitive edge sharpened before the start of the track season. Now the crowd line up behind those police barriers in John Dobson Street for the start, and then up Northumberland Road, back down Northumberland Street, which is slightly downhill, and across New Bridge Street. There are 6 laps of this course around pretty familiar landmarks to many of these athletes. The corners, incidentally, are pretty tight. There are 30 other class runners in the field, all anxious to have a go at these star names in what could be a real trendsetter for the future. And just before the start of the race, we had a chat to the 2 men principally responsible for bringing this big crowd to the city centre of Newcastle. Well, Steve and David, already a great atmosphere prevailing. The crowd's already turned up. Looks good.
It looks very good. We've got a nice evening for it, thank God, no rain. I think that was the main thing from our point of view, especially from the spectators. It should be a good race. Looking forward to it, David?
Yeah, very much so. The atmosphere will make the race, and you know, there's sufficiently good runners in there to make sure it's fast all the way, and should be very interesting.
Now, in your good seasons, you were knocking off this lad over miles and 1,500 metres. He's crept on a bit since then.
That was many years ago.
And it looks like a clash of the titans, but is you know, it's just a competitive edge coming back to your running before you start the track season?
It's ideal. It's a sort of distance we all enjoy. It's, as I say, the atmosphere. It's a relatively flat course, and there are a lot of good runners in there. People like McLeod and Dave Lewis who'll you know, make sure that it is a fast and hard race. So I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. I think.
You think? Do you enjoy road racing as opposed to track racing and cross-country racing?
Yeah, I still enjoy it, but obviously it isn't as important to do well. I mean, if I don't particularly run well in a road race, then it isn't going to be as disastrous as if I don't do well on the track, because this isn't the time of year when you particularly want to be at your best. But having said that, as you say, it's something which you take within your training programme or your preparation as a race which is going to give you a bit of competitive edge. It's ideal for the likes of myself, you know, a little bit over distance should be good. Well,
glad to see you both fully fit and recovered. Have a good race and enjoy it.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ron.
Well, Steve Cram may be being a little canny about what he's going to do in this race, but once this crowd gets behind him, they're going to expect great things. And once he finds out that Mick McLeod is determined to impress this crowd as well, such is his reputation here in the northeast, I think he's going to have a race on his hands. Indeed, they all are. Steve Cram wears 1, David Moorcroft 2, Mick McLeod 3, David Lewis, too, is another of the favourite runners who will wear 5. There are 34 runners in the lineup, and there's a tremendous crowd turned up. We would have guaranteed that from the start here in Newcastle, of course. Bit of a break, faulty start rather than false start. But it's they've got to get away well, because the first turn comes after about 100 metres, and it's a sharp left-hander. Race Medley wearing unlucky 13. Steve Empson wearing 7 right in the middle there with the beard for Birchfield. And that nice, easy loping style of Steve Cram wearing 1, Dave Moorcroft running wide in red. And they're away, and the crowd are already enjoying it. Look out for David Lewis on the right in pale blue, wearing number 5. And just take us around the course, Stuart.
Well, this is Northumberland Road. They're turning left now into Northumberland Street. This is the fastest part of the course. I suppose it's nearly 300 metres long. And this is where they'll begin to sort themselves out. It has a very sharp turn at the end of this long straight. But look at this bunching and the spread, which will have to close in, Ron, as they approach the end of this road.
Yes, I was saying the corners are pretty tight. They've come under the finish line. They've got 6 laps to go. You can still throw a blanket over most of them. The man without a number in the front is Mike Bishop of Staffordshire. He should be wearing 11 in the red, white and blue. But Mick McLeod, the Elsick Harrier, one of the great local clubs, going up with David Lewis, who wears 5. And, of course, the two big names, Steve Cram and David Moorcroft, very much with them.
And now in New Bridge Street, it's about 120 metres long, and then they'll turn left again past the Central Library and the Lang Gallery, and under the pedestrian pass and the shops overhead, and you can see the shadow there as they go into that shaded area.
And the other unnumbered runner on the right there should be wearing 9. That's Mike Chalton of Stainforth. And is this a break by Mick McLeod? Mick McLeod, who runs in front of his own place of work 6 times, will have a big following. Now 32, travel agent. Hobby is scuba diving. There he is wearing 3. He knows that wearing 5, David Lewis, is in good form. David Moorcroft back to good form. He doesn't travel well. He's been down under, as he normally spends his winters, and that tummy bug that's affected him on 2 particular winters and the injury, well, that's totally cleared up, he says. Mike Chalton, the man in white on the right with no number, should be wearing number 9. And Steve Cram loping along, super stride, tucking in behind David Moorcroft.
They're now on the flat part of the course in Northumberland Road, having come up John Dobson Street, which was quite an uphill haul. It's long and gradual, and they'll be quite pleased now as they begin to turn down into Northumberland Street for the second time. And there'll be 5 laps to go once they come through.
The evening cooled down. It's been a glorious day here in Newcastle. The sun was up all day. It's just setting, and in the shadow of these tall buildings, familiar landmarks, well, it's got very cool indeed. They were warming up beforehand, and Mike Chalton now in the white with Mike McLeod on his right, David Moorcroft, Steve Cram, all the big names up there, also looking good in the picture. 15, Paul Cuskin, Jared Hepburn, who's the training partner of Stevie Cram.
So into New Bridge Street once again, and I must say, Ron, Mick McLeod looks very comfortable indeed, and a lot of the locals around here, including Brendan Foster, tip him to be perhaps the man to beat here.
Well, Mick McLeod, of course, has suffered a little bit, first of all in the shadow of Big Brendan Foster for about 10 years when Brendan was holding the limelight, and Mick McLeod in his shadow, and then just as it was almost his time really to come forward, then of course Steve Cram. These 3 great runners from the northeast have played such an important part in building up a great tradition for middle distance running. That's the 1 mile marker, so you can see the pace they're running at, 4:11, 4:12, and Mike Bishop it is in the red, white and blue that takes the lead. One of twins, he's 29 years of age and he's getting away a little bit. Mike McLeod going after him. 4:17 in fact at 1 mile. 4:17 at 1 mile, Mike Bishop the leader, and that is fast on this course. Dave Moorcroft, well, grimacing just a little bit. He knows he's in a race, that's for sure. This was never going to be a stroll. Steve Empson, number 7 in the beard. Alastair Hutton, well known in this part of the world. Ray Smedley wearing 13, 16 there was Ron Spate. 21 is Mark Humble from Gosforth. All the big northeast clubs very much to the fore. And wearing 14, John Solly over on the left there, the tall figure in mauve and blue.
Well, coming up now to 4 laps to go, and just to remind you that each one of these maps encompassed by the 4 streets, 769 metres for that total of 6.5 laps at 5,000 metres.
Mike Bishop, one of the well-known Bishop twins, with no number, should be 11, 29, 20th in the national cross-country. All of these men experienced in the national, that gruelling race over 9.5 miles. And David Moorcroft, looking quite comfortable. 31 next week, David, Coventry Godiva Harrier. His coach, John Anderson, has nursed him through some bad patches as far as injuries are concerned, the operation on the legs, but that fabulous 5,000-metre world record that he gained in Oslo has set him up with a record that is really almost beyond comparison. Perhaps that and the 800 metres by Sebastian Coe, but good to see him back. And if all these men are fit for Los Angeles, then we're going to have our greatest strength in depth at middle distance running that we've ever had.
Well, Mick McLeod certainly at his happiest on that uphill slope on the far side of this course. It's there where he's surged up to the front, and he's been overtaken down the very fast downhill slope. Now let's see what happens as they approach the downhill on this occasion.
Mick McLeod, coached by Alan Story, and winner of the North East Boys and Youth Cross Country title many years ago. Winner of the Morpeth, that's a famous run up here, Newcastle to Morpeth. He won it in '76. Means a lot to win it up here. It's 13 5/8 miles, and he's won it, what, about half a dozen times in all. And that gains the respect of every man in this race. David Moorcroft and Steve Cram just on the shoulder. David Lewis, the 22-year-old from Rossendale in Lancashire. The librarian at Accrington, he's tucking in. He's in third place now, Mick McLeod and David Moorcroft. There he is in the blue and white stripes. Former student at Loughborough and a winner of the indoor 3,000 metres against the United States. 3 laps to go. 3 laps to go, and the crowd getting behind them now. Mick McLeod having a look to see whose company he's keeping. And it's Moorcroft. And Steve Cram happy to be towed along. Steve Cram, who also had his injury problems over the winter, but back now. And this group is breaking away. At the back of it, Gary Nagle of Gateshead. He's doing himself proud. He's in good company there. Mike Bishop. And David Moorcroft is pushing the pace along just a little bit.
David Moorcroft, of course, will want to underline his pre-selection for the Olympic Games. He had 2 very disappointing races across in Australia and New Zealand early on, then came back with a fine qualifying time over 5,000 metres, and this is an underlining process.
Steve Cram then, recognising that some of the big names ahead of him are 5,000 metre and 10,000 metre runners. His own forte, of course, 1,500 metres and 1 mile. So he's in amongst the big boys. Eventually, of course, he may mature into it, but this is a long race for him. Easy striding. He's 6'1½", and what a couple of years he's had. But he's losing the pace now, and McLeod's getting away, and David Lewis is getting away as well. And they've broken away, and even David Moorcroft is not staying with it at the moment. Mick McLeod looking over his shoulder, and he'd love to do well up here. 2 miles were run in 8:44, so it's fast. And look at this gap, about 10 metres. John Solly is in that second crowd, and up with Steve Cram, and Mick McLeod getting away, the Elsick Harrier. David Moorcroft grimacing just a little bit. Steve Cram not making up the gap. David Lewis, who's was 6th in the national cross country, has been running in Australia, New Zealand and the United States. And these two getting away, and the crowd loving it.
Just 2 laps to go now, and it really is a tremendous pace, about 200 metres or more now, splitting the whole of this field. You can see them spreading out there, and McLeod has really put the spanner in the works now, but Lewis is not dropped by any means.
These two well away. David Lewis hard on the shoulder of Mick McLeod, and that's a big gap for David Moorcroft to make up. He's getting away just a little bit from John Solly, the man at Durham University, and holding on to third. He's well ahead of Steve Cram, but these two are really piling on the pace now.
Dave Lewis, the hard man, will want to work hard up this hill now. It's only slight, but it's significant. And let's see whether Mick McLeod can hang on until he gets the luxury of the flat and downhill slope.
Well, a few reputations at stake, and still McLeod getting away. Mick McLeod, at 32, loves the challenge. He's an athlete's athlete. Hasn't really come good in major championships, but twice winner of the golden 10,000 metres, remember. The first British runner to beat Big Bren at 5,000 metres back in '78. A winner of the national in '79. All the credentials there. And David Lewis, almost a young pretender. David Lewis at 22. The man who's been 5 times in the English Schools Championships at track and field, and 5 times at cross country. That's a unique record First competed in those schools at 14 years of age, and doesn't he look confident at the moment? David Lewis on the shoulder of Mick McLeod. And of course the whole of Newcastle were hoping for a local victory, but I just wonder. David Lewis having a look to see where Cram is, having a look at John Solly, who's having a fine run, the man wearing 14. And David Moorcroft has lost his third place to John Solly, and that gap, as they hear the bell, is something like 80 yards.
769 metres left in this 5,000 metres.
Steve Cram looks a bit ring rusty at the moment. It's now, with another half mile to go, it's proving to be a long one for him, but great to see him back after injury. And David Lewis has taken up the running. Now he's against one of the fastest finishers in the world. At his best, McLeod could hold Miras Yifter over the last 60 metres, and one will remember one or two great battles he had with Brendan Foster over the last 80 metres of the odd race. Now David Lewis, probably better known as a steeplechaser, but going for the 5,000 metres in Los Angeles, and so this would be a marvellous charge to the start of his season. Now, can McLeod pick it up on this last lap?
I certainly think that it's possible, certainly in Northumberland Street. The downhill, well, that's what McLeod's waiting for, and I fancy the sprinter will show his sprinting prowess there.
Cracking finish, it really is. Building up. David Moorcroft still in the picture. The man holding third is John Solly. And then Steve Cram, and then Mike Chorlton. Mike Chorlton in white without a number. John Solly in third. He was fourth in the World Student Games cross country. He's had a good season, and this is going to be quite a battle because behind him is the reigning world record holder, David Moorcroft. 31 next week. But the battle up front, what a cracking race it's turning out to be. David Lewis, Mick McLeod. And they've got the last 100 metres or so is downhill, and they're on their way home now. Look at this. And David Lewis, of course, reckons he can sprint a bit, but McLeod says, well, watch me go. In front of my home crowd, this has got to be my race. McLeod just passes his own working area there. It's only going to be 5 metres at it, but it's a local victory. Mick McLeod done it from David Lewis. David Moorcroft coming in third. David Moorcroft doing exceptionally well, holding off John Solly. There he is. Moorcroft back. And then a fine race by Mike Chorlton ahead of Steve Cram. Oh, they'll cheer this lad over. Of course, since last track season he got married. That's a very fast time, 13:30 for exactly 5,000 metres, and 26 just across the line. That was Colin Moore from Bingley, the winner of the Intercounties cross country. Alastair Hutton has just gone through. Steve Empson coming up to the line now. Then Gary Nagle wearing 22. And then we've got Mike Bishop, the twin, across the line. 16 there is Ron Spate, and they're all coming across the line now. But what a cracking win for Mick McLeod. Now, let me just tell you that the Olympic qualifying time for Los Angeles is 13:35, and the first two men bettered that in a road race. And Mick McLeod must be wondering whether 5 or 10,000 metres will be his métier for Los Angeles. 78 Commonwealth bronze at 10,000 metres, the 1978 UK 5,000 metre champion. And then he went through a few bad patches, had good races, but in major championships. But in that time, twice winner of the golden 10,000 metres, and when put to the test in front of his home crowd, invariably comes good, and he will have enjoyed this 5,000 metres tonight. That lap of honour, well deserved by Mick McLeod.
13:30.7 the official time. You must be delighted, Mike.
Absolutely delighted, especially on the home ground.
Yeah, I mean, this crowd must have lifted you all the way around.
Absolutely fantastic. It was electric, the crowd running around here. There wasn't an inch space to spare on that ground all the way around, and to run and win in the front of the home crowd is fabulous.
Yeah, you had that sort of look on your face that you were enjoying it all the way. Were there any bad patches?
On the last lap I was struggling a little bit, and Dave started to pull away, but I knew if I dug in and got him on the downhill I should be able to outkick him.
David Lewis ran well, didn't he?
Very well. He's very sharp at the moment and strong.
Were you surprised at Stevie Cram or David Moorcroft?
Well, not so much Steve. He's been training very hard, and his main concern is LA this year. So I think he would like to have had a better run, but the way he finished, it doesn't make any difference to Steve Crown.
Well, now the way you're running, 13:30, Los Angeles coming up. Where does that take you? What event are you going to run it?
10k, but first of all I've got to get through the trials, which is at the end of May. That's not going to be easy. First of all, get through the trials and then on the way to LA.
Still, definitely the 10,000 metres, not the 5,000 metres.
Yes, 10,000 trial, but I'll be doing some 5s on the track and some mile races to sharpen up.
Oh, great. Anyway, well done. Super race. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Pleasure.
The crowd's absolutely packing Northumberland Street for the presentation. Mike McLeod on the rostrum, David Lewis and David Moorcroft. The presentation to be made by Councillor Norman Stockdale, who's the Deputy Lord Mayor of Newcastle. He takes over as Mayor next month. And look how the North East have proved again how they love their athletics. There must be many city centres that are capable of staging this, and what an atmosphere they've created once again in Newcastle. They've got a local victory, which